once again, very big warm welcome to all of our agents. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us for this webinar. This is the MakeChangeFly webinar with the Lufthansa Group, who have committed to sustainable travel. We are joined here today with Dr. Frank, who is the General Manager of Sales in the UK, Ireland and Iceland, and also Thomas, our Key Account Manager in the UK for the Lufthansa Group. So, big welcome to anyone who has joined again. I just want to put it out there. Everyone who has joined, can you please use your full name? It will just help us towards the end of the webinar when it comes to choosing winners. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our two gentlemen.
Thank you, Taylor. Very much appreciated that you, OTT, give us the possibility to have this webinar, this short webinar with our travel agency community. And I appreciate that we have an audience from the UK and Ireland, but even from some of the Nordic countries as well. Thank you very much for joining us. I have with me Tom, who Taylor already kindly introduced, who is our sustainability anchor for the Nordic markets. So he's an expert. If I can't answer any questions after the end of my little presentation, Tom is the man to go to. But hopefully we keep it relevant for all of you. And please also make sure to stay online because we have a prize to offer at the very end. So it's worthwhile staying till the end. Thank you very much.
And just a big thank you again from my side for joining. Hopefully you find this webinar educational. You learn something new. Perhaps you get more interested in the topic of sustainability that we know is super important for Lufthansa Group, but kind of the wider travel infrastructure in general. We're just going to kick things off just with a short video, just with a short introduction and overview of our MakeChangeFly initiatives, and then Frank will lead in with a bit more of an in-depth view into that. So I'm just going to share my screen.
What does this, and this, and that have to do with flying? To become carbon neutral by 2050, in addition to the measures we have already taken, we decided to go one step further and look for inspiration where we have never looked before. That's how we came up with ways to turn challenges into solutions. Like waste, used vegetable oil, or food residues into sustainable aviation fuel. Today, the Lufthansa Group is already SAF's top customer in Europe. Until we replace all single-use plastic items with sustainable alternatives, we will also convert some into crude oil. We're even developing solutions to use jet fuel made from CO2 that has been pulled back out of the atmosphere. Other answers were found in nature. For example, bamboo, from which we make compostable cutlery. This plant grows super fast and is therefore the perfect CO2 absorber. Or aeroshock, a film that replicates the skin of sharks and reduces friction and drag, and thus fuel consumption. And while we're talking about efficiency, by bringing artificial intelligence on board, we managed to optimize daily operations and flight routes to reduce fuel consumption. That's how we aspire to bring flying and nature into harmony. We make sharks fly. We make bamboo fly. We make waste and oil fly. We make change fly. Lufthansa Group.
So I hope that gives a nice quick overview of the cool initiatives that Lufthansa Group have been putting in place over the last kind of few years or so. Frank's going to go into a bit more detail into each of those now and our overall targets. So I'll hand over to Frank to lead over on that.
MakeChangeFly is our commitment and claim to sustainable travel. And we believe in the value of air transport. We, as a globally operating airline, we are aware of the responsibility, and even though only 2.5% of carbon emissions are produced by the combined aviation industry, we are acutely aware of our responsibility to preserve the planet. Our CO2 targets are to become carbon neutral by 2050. That's in line with the Fit for 55 efforts in Europe. And on the way to that, we want to reduce our carbon emissions by half by 2030, half compared to 2019. And the way we want to achieve that is by a mix of avoidance, reduction, and compensation. For us, that means fleet renewal, improved operational efficiency, innovative technological solutions, and sustainable aviation fuel and carbon offsetting. These are the different kind of pillars of how we want to achieve that. For the next decade or so, the most fuel efficient aircraft remains the key driver for reducing CO2 during this decade. We have already fixed orders of 190 aircraft to bring in by 2030, 80 of which are part of our long-haul fleet, Airbus 350, Dreamliners, 787, Boeing 777s, and the rest of those to be added as part of our short-haul fleet, Airbus 320 and 320s. With those aircraft, we can reduce the fuel consumption already by 30% compared to previously used aircraft. Another pillar is the usage of sustainable aviation fuel. For us, sustainable aviation fuel, or otherwise called SAF, is essential for the energy transition and a key step on the path to carbon neutral aviation. The fundamental concept behind SAF is that we replace fossil fuels over the long term using sustainable alternatives. Compared to fossil fuels, SAF emissions reduce CO2 emissions by up to 80% already during the production process. And the SAF Lufthansa is currently using and starting to use in more larger quantities is produced from residual materials. For example, used cooking and vegetable oils, fats discarded by the food service industry, and which have become feedstock for fuel producers. What's important to know is that Lufthansa Group is one of the largest purchasers of SAF for biogenic residues. In 2021, we have secured SAF worth $250 million worth, the largest sustainability investment in the history of the Lufthansa Group to date. And recently, Lufthansa Group has signed a memorandum of understanding with Shell for the largest SAF deal in history. The SAF we procure, we make available to all our customers, including corporates, ours and your corporates. Any of your corporate clients can buy SAF from us, and for a purchase of upward for 2,000 euros worth, the buyer receives a certificate for Scope 3, the highest current standard of greenhouse gas protocol from a recognized auditor, Miller BBM, for measuring emissions. What's really charming is that we also offer that to our corporate customers as part of our corporate programs. Many of you will know Partner with Benefit, which is our go-to program for small and medium companies all over the world, so in all of your markets, where our corporates can use the entitlements, which are points they earn for their flights, and they can use them towards the purchase of SAF and offset their travel emissions. Another possibility as part of the compensation is carbon offsetting with a platform that our Lufthansa Innovation Hub has developed called Compensate. We allow travelers to monitor their travel activities and compensate for all their CO2 emissions. And you have two choices as part of that platform. Either you purchase SAF before and even during your travel, and some of our aircraft on a short-haul fleet with internet access, you can actually do it during your travel. And you can also choose then between whether you want to spend some money on the SAF or on carbon offset projects, or which are organized and selected by our partner MyClimate from Switzerland, or a combination of both. So passengers of the Lufthansa Group airlines will find that compensate tool directly in the booking portal of every of our Lufthansa Group airlines. And it's now also incorporated in the booking flow. I mentioned the Partner Plus Benefit program, which is the go-to tool for all the smaller and mid-sized companies. But we also offer for larger companies to buy SAF directly from us. The other options that we are currently developing and working towards are other alternative fuels. One technology, power to liquid, where we use renewably generated electricity, water, and CO2. Some of it, of the electricity, CO2 extracted from the atmosphere, which will create a synthetic crude oil that can be processed into kerosene. And with that process, only as much CO2 is released than was previously removed. So already a carbon neutral option and solution. And furthermore, the Lufthansa Group together and Swiss have a strategic collaboration with ETH Zurich, which is an academic institution where we created a spin-off called Synhelion to bring solar aviation fuel to the market. We call it sun to liquid, which closes the fuel carbon cycle, because when combusted, it will only produce as much CO2 as went into its manufacture. And this is really exciting because Swiss will be the first airline in the world to use that sun to liquid fuel already in 2023. Obviously, those technologies are still in development and are only, coming online in the years to come, but hopefully they will contribute towards the complementing our alternative fuels. Another very important pillar in our path to carbon neutral is to avoid carbon emissions. And one of the big aspects there is our history that we already have in the intermodular space, which means that we combine modes of transport with operators of rail. That already has been happening in Germany for a long time. We have a history there with Deutsche Bahn, where we now operate 130 daily destinations by rail to 25 German cities from Frankfurt Airport. So passengers can travel directly from the airport with the rail to the final destination. A similar cooperation exists in Switzerland with the Swiss Bundesbahn, where we have 20 trains from Basel, 14 from Lugano, and 10 from Geneva to Zurich daily. And in Austria, we offer 35 so-called railjet connections between Linz and Salzburg to Vienna Airport. What's nice about these solutions, they are rather seamless, because you can already check in at the central railway stations, get your boarding passes, collect miles, and you can even enjoy free Wi-Fi on most of the trains. Also, another pillar towards reducing carbon is obviously to also improve operational efficiency. Lufthansa works on several measures there. Only in 21, we participated in 22 fuel-saving projects, which include activities like improved passage of flights, weight reduction, and other technical developments. And you see on this chart here on the left, sustainable packaging. We're also very committed towards the circular economy, that we get rid of single-use plastics by 25 and use sustainable material also for products on board, for instance, like you saw on the little clip, bamboo. Then we also, one thing to mention is that we also are involved in other exciting technical developments, many of them based on learning from nature, One product to mention, very notable, is one we call AeroShark, which is an adhesive film applied to the surface of the aircraft fuselage. And that's produced in collaboration with BASF. And it replicates the structure of a shark skin. That reduces the drag and the friction of the plane in flight. And with that, the use of kerosene to a total of 1.1% of the actual consumption, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it equates to, over a year, it already equates to 3.7 tons of kerosene or 11.7 tons of CO2 emissions, which is the equivalent of 48 flights between Frankfurt and Shanghai. So all these measures combined put us on a good track to carbon neutrality. Just to have an overview of the measures here, most of them are mentioned. So the fleet, the flight operations, sustainable aviation fuels, carbon neutral flying, intermodality, and the reducing waste and plastics. We also worthwhile mentioning is that we now incorporate sustainability in our products and partnerships. Some of you might be aware, especially the colleagues dialing in from the Nordic markets, is that we're currently trialing green fares in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. And we also have kind of endorsed the idea of Deutsche Bahn, our partner, becoming the first kind of intermodal member of Star Alliance, which is also a signal that we as an airline industry promote the cooperation between different modes of transport if it helps avoiding, also for the convenience obviously of the passengers, because on short distances it is convenient to take the train, you don't need to fly, but to make it a seamless product. We also have an initiative that we call the Clean Tech Hub. This is a platform that we provide where we bring innovative technology startups, inventors from the digital, environmental, and investment ecosystem to share their ideas with the option to collaborate with us and across industries. And to end my little monologue is to remind you as a travel agency community that we have experts as our platform, go-to platform for all your communication needs and information needs, where you can find all the sales related information for our Lufthansa Group airlines and learn about our products, including our efforts about sustainability. And that's something I would really encourage you to sign up to if you haven't already, to stay on top of all the developments with our airline group. And I think now I'll leave the floor for questions. I haven't followed the chat, so hopefully you have some questions that we'll be able to answer. And as I mentioned before, at the very end, I think we now also have a poll, and then we have the prize at the end. Thanks very much for your attention. Now stop sharing the screen.
Hi, Frank. Thank you for your amazing presentation. Very informative. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our agents did today as well. We do have a couple questions here regarding fleet renewal. One of our agents says, I understand the newer aircraft are more efficient, but I would love to know what happens to the old aircraft and the carbon embedded in that process.
Good question. I mean, some of the fleet will be commissioned gradually, so some of them remain in operation, but then more and more they will be decommissioned. And to be quite honest, I don't know how they will be. I think we normally offer most of the aircraft to be upcycled or to be reused, also for other customers. But I think upcycling is one of the trends that we're also involved in, even to the extent that we use some of the materials for secondary products. But I understand that it's also a challenge to decommission the unused parts of aircraft. Yeah, it's definitely a big topic.
Interesting, thank you. And then another one, same agent wants to know what happens to the bamboo cutlery once used. Can it be recycled? How does it avoid landfills?
I think the bamboo cutlery is reusable, so it can be used again, and it is recyclable. Yes.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all that I can see from my end, questions that were asked. So Frank, if you want to move on to the polls, are you ready for that?
Okay, I am.
Okay. So I'm going to launch the first question.
Okay, so the question is, how important is sustainability for you personally? You have one choice: not important at all, somewhat important, important, or very important. Very good. Glad to see that most of us believe in the need for sustainability, and let's see how committed we are all to make our personal contribution. Now here's an interesting one. Would you accept to pay higher airfares for the environment's sake? Yes, no, or maybe? Okay. Almost half say yes, and the other half says maybe. And you know, fair enough. People are, you know, honest enough to say no. I would also not pay higher airfares. And I think there's a final question. Right. Now this is to check whether you were attentive during the little presentation. Do you know what SAF stands for? Only yes or no. Nobody will be put on the spot. Okay, wonderful. 94% know what it stands for. Very good. I mean, it's a term that will stick with us, and you know, the challenge is now to produce the SAF in the commercial quantities needed to blend it in the quantities to make a significant impact and reduction on CO2 emissions, and that also needs the incentivization not only from us as airlines, but from the regulators and governments and so on. So it's a big task ahead of us.
I would just like to come back on here and just thank you, Frank and Tom, for taking the time to educate myself and our agents. Really appreciate it, learned a lot. I can honestly say I love what you guys are doing, caring for our planet. I mean, future generations are, you know, that's what it's all about. So I would just like to say thank you on behalf of everyone else for that as well. And a big thank you to our agents for taking the time to join us today. Hope you all
really appreciate your time and everybody joining us today.
Yes, love to see it. Thank you, everyone. And congratulations once again to our winner. And I think that's us for today. Hopefully we do this again soon with more stats and interesting finds and big changes you guys are making. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, stay well, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.